Elliot Hawke stood at the entrance of the Grand Palace, a mixture of nerves and excitement running through him. He had never been to a planet like Valthanar, where the sky shimmered with 2 suns and the atmosphere hummed with energy. It was the capital of an ancient and proud alien race, known for their intelligence, beauty, and ruthless political power. Elliot had been sent to negotiate a treaty with them, to help form an alliance with humanity. The palace loomed before him like a towering monument, its walls made of dark stone that seemed to shimmer with an inner light. As Elliot walked into the grand hall, he could feel the weight of history pressing on his shoulders. Every step he took felt like it was echoing through the centuries of the Valthanar's existence. He was ushered inside by a group of servants, all dressed in fine robes and speaking a language he couldn't understand. They moved with precision, their eyes never meeting his, as if he were some kind of rare artifact on display. Finally, they stopped in front of a set of massive double doors. Elliot was told to wait, and after a moment, they opened to reveal the throne room. Sitting on a raised platform at the far end of the room was the Queen herself, Nyxaria. Her presence seemed to fill the room, her sharp, regal features illuminated by the soft light coming from the room's strange, glowing orbs. Her eyes were like pools of dark liquid, deep and unfathomable, studying him with an intensity that made him feel small. Her silver hair cascaded down her back in flowing waves, and her skin, though clearly alien, held a strange beauty that was almost otherworldly. Elliot felt a surge of awe. It was impossible not to. She was a queen in every sense of the word. Commanding, powerful, and yet serene in a way that suggested she held the entire galaxy within her grasp. "You must be Elliot Hawke," she said, her voice soft, yet carrying an unmistakable authority. Her words were in perfect English, though there was an accent he couldn't quite place. "I've heard much about you." Elliot stepped forward, trying to steady his nerves.
"Your Majesty,"
he said with a respectful bow.
"It is an honor to meet you."
Nyxaria's gaze never wavered as she studied him. "The honor is mine," she said, her lips curving into a slight smile. "Please, sit. We have much to discuss." Elliot lowered himself into the chair that had been placed for him, doing his best to remain calm under the weight of her gaze. He had been briefed about this meeting, about the delicate nature of the negotiations. The Valthanar were not interested in just any alliance. They wanted something more, something that could secure their place in the galaxy. And that something, as far as Elliot could tell, was the human race. Their conversation began formally, with both sides discussing the terms of the treaty. The Valthanar wanted access to human resources, materials, technology, and trade routes. In exchange, they would offer their advanced knowledge in various fields, from medicine to energy generation. But there was something in the air, something unspoken between them, that made the negotiations feel more like a chess match than a simple agreement. Nyxaria's questions were sharp, cutting straight to the heart of the matter. She didn't ask about Earth's economy or its politics. Instead, she inquired about humanity's history, its capacity for loyalty, for honor. She wanted to know what drove human beings, what made them tick. And Elliot, though he had studied the Valthanar for years, found himself unsure of how to answer. They were so different from humans, so distant in their way of thinking. As the conversation continued, Elliot became more and more aware of how deeply this woman was studying him. It wasn't just the treaty she was interested in. It was something more. There was an intelligence in her eyes that went beyond politics, something calculating and precise, like a strategist plotting several moves ahead. Finally, after a long pause, Nyxaria asked a question that caught him completely off guard. "What do you think of unions, Mr. Hawke?" she asked, her tone still calm and measured. Elliot blinked, confused. "Unions? You mean, like, alliances? Trade unions?" She shook her head slightly, a smile playing at the corners of her lips. "No. Unions, marriage, bonding of people." Elliot's mouth went dry. He wasn't sure where this conversation was headed, But the change in subject was jarring. It was no longer about trade routes or resources. It felt personal, like something much more intimate. "Marriage?" he repeated slowly, unsure of what she was asking. "Yes," Nyxaria replied. "You see, we Valfanar believe in forming bonds. True, meaningful bonds. Sometimes it is necessary to make sacrifices, to unite two very different people for the greater good of all. Do you understand?" Elliot wasn't sure if she was testing him, or if she truly meant what she was saying. The question seemed out of place, but he couldn't help but feel that there was more to it than just curiosity. His mind raced as he tried to think of a proper response. "I understand," he said, trying to keep his voice steady. "Unions can strengthen relationships. They create ties that go beyond just politics. They can be meaningful." There was another long pause as Nyxaria looked at him, her gaze unwavering. Elliot felt his heart beat a little faster, the air between them thick with tension. Finally, the Queen leaned forward slightly, her eyes narrowing with a glint of something almost mischievous. "Then perhaps I will make a proposal," she said, her voice soft but carrying a weight of something serious. "A union between us, a joining of our peoples, perhaps even more." Elliot's heart skipped a beat. A proposal? He couldn't have heard her right. "I beg your pardon?" he asked, his voice faltering. Nyxaria's smile grew wider, her eyes gleaming with amusement.
"I said I accept."
Elliot froze. His mind scrambled to make sense of her words. Had she just accepted? Was this a joke? A diplomatic strategy? Her smile remained, warm but somehow intimidating. "A proposal, Mr. Hawke. You suggested it, and now I accept. Shall we proceed?" Elliot's mouth went dry again. He could feel the room spinning, his thoughts racing. He hadn't proposed anything serious, had he? It had just been a thought, a passing comment. He had never meant to suggest anything like this, but Nyxaria seemed so calm, so sure of herself, that he couldn't help but wonder if he had just stepped into a game he didn't understand. The Queen's gaze softened for a moment, as if she sensed his confusion. "You must understand, Mr. Hawke," she said gently. "I don't take such things lightly. But perhaps there is more to you than I first realized. We'll see how this plays out, won't we?" Elliot could only nod, his mind a whirlwind of thoughts and questions. What had he just gotten himself into? And why did he suddenly feel like he was playing in a much larger game than he had ever anticipated? Elliot stood in the grand hall of the Valfanar Palace, trying to make sense of what had just happened. The Queen's words echoed in his mind. "Then I accept." It didn't make sense. He had made a casual remark about unions, something that had seemed like a diplomatic pleasantry, but Nyxaria's response had been clear. She had accepted. Elliot paced back and forth in the quiet room, trying to calm his racing thoughts. The walls, tall and imposing, seemed to close in on him. He had just agreed to something? Or had he? He needed answers, but no one had warned him about this. There was no playbook for this kind of situation. His mind returned to the conversation in the throne room. She had been calm, even warm, yet her gaze had been intense, focused. She wasn't like any leader he had met before, human or alien. There was something powerful about her, a quiet authority that demanded respect. And yet, beneath that power there was something else. A challenge, perhaps? A spark of curiosity in her eyes that made him wonder if there was more to this than just politics. "Your Majesty, I need to understand," he muttered to himself, trying to find some logic in the situation. But before he could go any further in his thoughts, there was a knock at the door. "Enter!" he called out, startled by the intrusion. The door opened, and one of the Valfanar servants stepped inside. She was tall, her features sharp and striking, her movements graceful but purposeful. She bowed slightly before speaking. Mr. Perry caught. "Hawke," "Queen Nixaria requests your presence," she said. Elliot's heart skipped a beat. The Queen? So soon? He had expected some time to process everything, to seek counsel from his fellow diplomats. But now he had no choice but to follow her. He straightened himself and nodded. "I'll be right there." The servant stepped back, and Elliot took a deep breath. He had no idea what to expect, but he couldn't afford to delay. With a final glance around the room, he made his way through the palace, following the servant down a series of long, winding corridors. The palace was even more impressive on the inside, its walls lined with strange glowing stones that cast a soft light. It felt like he was walking through an ancient temple, a place where history was written in every stone, in every curve of the architecture. As they arrived at the grand throne room once more, Elliot's pulse quickened. He was led to the same platform where Nixaria had sat earlier. This time, though, she wasn't alone. Her advisors, alien beings of various shapes and sizes, were gathered around her. They all turned to look as Elliot entered, their eyes full of curiosity. Elliot swallowed hard. It was clear that his meeting with Nixaria was about to take a different turn. There was no going back now. Nixaria looked at him with a calm, unreadable expression. Her eyes didn't betray any emotion, but Elliot could sense that she was waiting for him to make the next move. It felt like a game, but one he wasn't sure how to play. "Mr. Hawk," Nixaria began, her voice smooth and controlled. "I trust you've had some time to think about our conversation." She leaned forward slightly, her eyes narrowing in a way that made Elliot feel both intrigued and uneasy.
"I assume you didn't expect me to take your words seriously."
Was this a test? Had she really been serious when she had said she accepted his proposal? "I didn't mean to offend," he said, his voice careful. "I was just speaking diplomatically." Nixaria nodded slowly, as if considering his response. "Diplomacy is an art, Mr. Hawk. But sometimes, in matters of great importance, words are not just words. They are actions. And when you suggested a union, I heard it as more than just a fleeting remark. I heard a possibility." Elliot was taken aback. He had no idea where this was going, but it was becoming clear that Nixaria was not someone who played by the usual rules. I didn't mean to suggest anything beyond a diplomatic agreement," Elliot said, trying to backpedal. But it was too late. Nixaria had already locked onto his words, as though she were analyzing every syllable. "The future of our people," Nixaria continued, "is intertwined with the future of your people. We face challenges in this galaxy, ones that require strength, unity, and trust. What I proposed was not just a political move, Mr. Derry." "Hawk!" "It was a vision for the future." She paused, her gaze intense. "And I'm not one to make idle promises." Elliot could feel the weight of her words. He understood the stakes. This wasn't just about trade routes or resources. It was about something far greater, something that could change the course of history. But did he really want to be part of this? Did he want to risk everything for a chance at peace, at unity with an alien queen? I need more time," Elliot said, his voice shaking with uncertainty. "This is a huge decision, not just for me, but for my people as well." Nixaria studied him for a long moment before nodding. "I understand. Take the time you need. But know this, Mr. Hawk, peace is not something we can afford to delay. The galaxy is shifting, and we must adapt." She stood up, signaling the end of their conversation.
I will give you space to think.
"But understand this. When you are ready, we will move forward together, or not at all." As she turned to leave, Elliot was left standing in the center of the room, overwhelmed. His mind raced, trying to process everything Nixaria had said, the proposal, the challenge, the weight of what it meant. He had never felt so uncertain, so torn between duty and desire. As the advisors began to file out of the room, one of them, an alien with translucent skin and long flowing limbs, approached him. Her voice was soft, almost soothing.
You've caught the Queen's attention, Mr. Tiff.
Hawk, she said quietly. It is rare for anyone to earn her trust, let alone her affection. Be careful. Nyxaria is not easily swayed, and neither is she a woman of compromise. She has already decided that you are the one. Elliot's heart sank. What had he gotten himself into? The next few days were a blur for Elliot. After his last conversation with Nyxaria, he had retreated into his quarters, trying to process everything. The words she had said, the weight of her proposal, the look in her eyes. It all kept swirling in his mind, like a storm he couldn't escape. He had tried to reach out to his fellow diplomats, but none of them could offer any clarity. Some were too distracted by the other negotiations, while others seemed to be too afraid to even speak about what had happened. They were all aware of the importance of the treaty, but none of them could have foreseen what Nyxaria had said to him. It felt like a game, one in which Elliot had no idea how to play. As the days passed, he found himself spending more and more time alone, walking the grand hallways of the palace, trying to clear his mind. The palace was beautiful, its architecture unlike anything he had ever seen. Strange statues and glowing crystals decorated the walls, casting an eerie light that only made the place feel more surreal. But it wasn't just the palace's strange beauty that made Elliot feel uneasy. It was Nyxaria herself. The more he thought about her, the more he realized that he was in over his head. She was a leader, a queen, and he was just a diplomat. A human diplomat who had accidentally proposed a union with an alien queen. One evening, after a long day of sitting in his room and staring at the stars outside his window, Elliot received another invitation to meet with Nyxaria. This time, there was no mystery about it. She had made her decision, and he needed to make his. When Elliot arrived at the throne room, Nyxaria was already waiting for him. She sat on her throne, her back straight, her expression unreadable. The advisors, who had been so numerous in their last meeting, were absent this time. It was just the two of them. "Mr. Hawk," Nyxaria said, her voice calm as ever, "I trust you have had enough time to think?" Elliot nodded, though he wasn't sure he had. His mind had been racing, constantly shifting between doubt and hope, fear and curiosity, but there was no avoiding it now. He had to make a choice. "I've thought about it," Elliot said, his voice steady despite the chaos in his mind. "And I need to ask you something."
This union you're proposing, what does it really mean? Is it just about politics?
Or is it something more? Nyxaria looked at him for a long moment before answering. "It is both, Mr. Todd. Hawk, politics is always part of it. But there is more than that. There is a bond, an understanding, something that transcends borders and species." Elliot swallowed hard. The idea of marrying an alien queen was something that had never even crossed his mind. But now, standing in front of her, he couldn't ignore the reality of what was at stake. You truly mean to form this bond with me?" Elliot asked, still trying to wrap his head around it. Nyxaria's eyes softened just slightly.
"I wouldn't have accepted your words so easily if I didn't."
Elliot paused, his mind churning.
He had thought of this as a negotiation, as something that could simply be signed and forgotten.
But Nyxaria's words were different. They were personal. She wasn't just interested in a political alliance. She wanted something deeper, and that scared him. "I'm not sure I'm the right person for this," Elliot admitted. "I'm just, human."
"I don't know what it means to be with someone like you."
Nyxaria stood, slowly moving down from her throne. She walked toward him, her steps measured and confident. As she stood before him, her presence seemed to fill the room.
"Your people are new to this galaxy," Nyxaria said, her voice low but steady. "You are learning, just as we have learned over the centuries.
It is not about what you have been. It is about what you can become. Elliot felt his heart race. Her words were powerful, and for the first time, he felt the full weight of what he was being offered. This wasn't just a political move for Nyxaria. It was something she believed in, something she was willing to risk everything for. "I don't know if I can be what you need," Elliot said, his voice shaking despite his best efforts to remain calm. Nyxaria reached out, her hand resting lightly on his shoulder. "You don't have to be perfect, Elliot. You only need to be willing to try, to trust." Elliot looked down at her hand, then up into her eyes. There was a vulnerability there, hidden behind the calm exterior of a queen. She wasn't just offering him a chance to be part of something bigger. She was offering him a chance to be part of her. "I don't want to be a pawn in your game," Elliot said, suddenly finding his voice. "I don't want to just be a symbol. I want to make my own choice. I want to know what this means, truly." Nyxaria's eyes searched his face, as if weighing his words. "Then let us make that choice together." Elliot was silent for a moment, the weight of her offer sinking in. She was not asking for a political alliance, not in the way he had thought. She was asking for something deeper, something that could change the course of both their lives. "I'll need time," Elliot said quietly, "to think, to understand what this truly means." Nyxaria nodded, her expression softening.
"I will give you the time you need, but remember, Elliot, sometimes in life the decisions we make are not just about the future.
They are about who we choose to be in the present." Elliot stood there for a long moment, staring at her. Her words were clear, but the choice was still overwhelming. Could he truly step into a future with her? Could he become part of this world? Part of a union that was as political as it was personal? As Nyxaria turned away to give him space, Elliot knew that this was only the beginning. His decision could change everything: his life, his people, and the future of the galaxy.